Remote reality, yeah, that's the key. Unlocking stories wild and free. With our hosts, side by side. Channel surfers, let's ride.
Hey, Channel Surfers, welcome to Remote Reality. This is Lauren, your friend and attorney host who loves to overanalyze everything, especially my favorite TV shows.
And this is Dee, her paralegal, and today, reluctant co-host.
Oh, hell yeah. I drug her kicking and screaming. As soon as I got the word that Murdaugh appeal opinion was out, I was like, Dee, I'm screaming at her as I'm getting dressed. Get ready. I'm getting ready. She's like, I don't want to do it. I don't do lives. I'm not doing this. I was like, Dee, come on. We need you.
Every
Right.
time you said something, I said, no. No.
No. Kicking and screaming today. Channel Surfers, if you are new here, we are Lauren and Dee. I am an attorney in South Carolina. Dee is my paralegal, and we love recapping our favorite reality TV and true crime things on Remote Reality. We've had our podcast for a year, but we watched every day of the Murdaugh trial because I'm a low country lawyer. Dee is on the coast. This is some local stuff for us. So as soon as I got a text message saying it was out, I was like, let's get ready. And you guys can go back and check out on YouTube. I did a live. It's about an hour and a half. I read and then started skimming through the 27-page opinion. And it's probably pretty boring, which is why I was like, you know what? Let's just talk about what we just learned and do a little short podcast episode about it. All right, Dee, thoughts on the unanimous Murdaugh appeal, overturning the case, his murder conviction, overturned, reversed, back that thing up, and we are getting a new trial.
Well, even when we were watching the trial, you were constantly saying, I think the financial stuff was too much, but that wasn't even the main reason for the overturn.
No.
It's
interesting. As I read through that opinion, you will see it in the live. I'm calling things out, and then I see the court using the same reasoning that I've used. My first thought is, what the fuck, Becky?
She screwed the pooch on that one. She did.
They placed every bit of blame on her. The reason that they overturned the trial was Becky Hill. The reason.
And rightly so. I mean, she totally fucked it up.
And
I'm
they
sorry.
had no point pointing that out over and over again. They either did that because that was their strongest argument, or because it was the simplest argument.
It was the simplest and most obvious, I think.
Especially as we get down into the opinion, because they do address the financial crimes in the opinion, and it's under the discretion of the trial court. It depends on the facts and circumstances, but they were troubled by that. They unanimously found that the trial court went too far and too deep into the financial crimes. For example, bringing up Tony Satterfield's brother being disabled, and that's why he had to be executor for the estate. What does that have to do with Alex Murdaugh murdering his wife and kids?
No. I mean,
Nothing.
And I know that section of the trial when we were watching it was really long as far as the financial stuff. I did not realize it was 12 and a half hours long.
12 and a half hours. And they said that that was what the state, I don't know if that includes cross-examination by the defense.
But they expect it to be like a quarter of that in the next go around.
Oh, they didn't even say the quarter. They're like, quickly. I mentioned also while I was reading during the live, I never thought that the financial crimes aspect, it wasn't persuasive to me as a motive. Because in South Carolina, we're not community property. Spouses can own property separately. They can have their own debts. So here's Alec being sued, people coming after him for money, property that belongs to Maggie. His creditors wouldn't touch that. So it makes no sense to me that he would kill her and make the property more vulnerable to his creditors.
Right. Well, I mean, when I was watching it, I mean, we talked about this a lot. The financials wasn't what I thought was the motive either. That wasn't even what was convincing to me. I couldn't really determine what I thought the motive was, but I thought the state's evidence on the timeline was amazing. And that's what had convinced me was the timeline evidence. The dogs, the video, the stamps on the phones and things like, the timeline evidence, all of it was great.
Now, let's talk about Becky Hill. They done
Okay.
ripped her a new one. Supreme Court. I mean, we already had Justice Toll talking about the siren call of celebrity.
Mm-hmm.
Supreme Court's like, this is all your fault, Becky.
Like, where are they at with her? Like, what's going on? Like, will she go to jail for any of the stuff that she did? Or is this just she's lost her job or what?
Oh,
What?
she resigned and clerk of court's an elected position. She pled guilty to perjury. I don't think she got jail time. I think she got probation.
You
But
know
that was
what?
for perjury. That's because she was lying to Justice
Right.
Toll, saying, I didn't say any of that. I don't know what
I-
these 3 jurors are talking about. I don't know what the clerk of court from Barnwell is saying when she's sitting there saying she heard me saying it to other people. I didn't say anything like that.
You know, they all, I hope, or I would think, I don't know. I'm sure this is probably not something that's possible, but it would be amazing if she had like some kind of restriction from ever getting any kind of money off of anything that has to do with this trial or her lack of or participation in it. Where if she decided to write a book or something, she would never be able to have any kind of financial gain from it.
Write a book, perjure a book.
Mm-hmm.
Just kidding. Not really. So, Becky Hill. During the post trial, where we had Justice Toll, who swore me in as an attorney way back in the day, she was Chief Justice.
Mm-hmm.
Her niece was in all my first year law school classes. Anyway,
Oh.
during that, we heard Dick Harpootlian arguing Fourth Circuit law, which is the federal courts. So the question is, what works? State, federal, what is the law here? As far as if you have an officer of the court, the bailiff, the clerk of court, the judge off duty, an attorney off duty, you have an officer of the court making statements to jurors about the matter that they are sitting on a jury during the trial to figure out what happens. What happens? Who has to prove what? So what the court found, the Supreme Court hearing, is that Murdaugh's defense team had a small standard, not beyond a reasonable doubt. They had a minimal burden to show that Becky Hill made some crappy statements. Like, it's an epic day in South Carolina. Watch his body language. Defendants don't usually testify. If you shouldn't take you very long to come up with this verdict. Stuff like that,
Yeah.
little things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely prejudicial.
And they found in that post-trial hearing that she said some messed up stuff. They're like, she shouldn't have said that stuff. The next thing that the Supreme Court has found, the law in South Carolina, is once that happens, then the burden of showing that there is no possibility that Becky Hill's statements could have prejudiced the jury, that falls on the state. The state has to bring that evidence in front of the court. Crate Waters has to get up there and say, there is no way, no possibility what she said. Becky Hill sitting there saying it to her friends in the hallway, saying it to the jurors, whoever. No possibility that that would have impacted their verdict. And they talked about the difference between extrinsic statements and intrinsic statements. So extrinsic is when Becky Hill's standing there in the hallway talking about Alex Murdaugh being a liar. And intrinsic would be like if a jury member came up and said, hey, Becky, what happens if we don't make this decision by 3? And Becky said, oh, the judge would probably ask if you guys could stay later. So that question is coming from the jury to Becky. And it's still improper for her to comment. But the question is whether or not that would be presumed to be prejudicial or whether that burden would be overcome. Probably. It's always presumed prejudicial when it is an officer of the court. Would that be innocuous and not proof that something was said wrong? Probably not. That's that internal. External is when Becky Hill sits there and says, y'all get out here faster if you hurry on up and get a verdict.
Yeah,
They weren't asking.
Yeah, anytime it's an officer of the court or anything like that, their statements are going to hold more weight than somebody outside
So
of the court system.
Becky, they're like, this is the reason we are overturning it. Now, they're not happy about the financial crimes either. And had the Becky situation not been there, they may have overturned this on financial crimes. I don't think they wanted to dig too deep into it because Becky gave them a
They didn't
nice,
need to.
easy out,
Yeah,
right?
they didn't
The
need
defense
to.
argued in the alternative. So let's keep it simple. But they were still so bothered by the financial crimes that they went and they addressed this in the opinion as guidance for the trial court when we
Mhm,
go back and have another Murdaugh trial.
mhm,
They said that the evidence was relevant, that it wasn't character evidence, that it was meant to prove motive, not character, which as soon as we looked at it, if you've listened to
mhm,
the live, I'm sitting there like, well, this is what the state's going to say is that it's proving
mhm.
motive and not that because Alex Murdaugh robbed vulnerable people that he obviously killed his wife. That's
Right.
impermissible character evidence under 404B.
Yeah, it just proves he's a shitty person, not a murderer.
Shitty person. And it can't be presented in this trial to make the
Mhm,
jury think badly of him and say, well, obviously he would do this. But they said it was proper for motive. It was
mhm,
proper for motive. What they didn't think was proper was how much they went on about this, especially when Murdaugh was up there saying, yeah, I committed the financial crimes. And
mhm.
then they went on it for 12.5 hours and they went into parts that really had nothing to do even with motive. So it kind of goes into the motive, but they ruled it out on more prejudicial than probative. In
Mhm,
other words, it's not tending to prove that he murdered his family as much as it's harming him
mhm,
in the eyes of the jury. Um, but those are very fact specific. It's up to the trial court's discretion on those matters.
mhm.
But they said it was too much, too deep, which makes me think even without Becky Hill, we still would have had this case overturned on finances.
Makes sense. She just made it a lot easier.
Right. Because it was also real messed up.
Mhm,
It was messed up. So I know a lot of people are not going to,
mhm,
sorry, let me get a little sip of water here. I've been talking for like 2 hours.
mhm.
And by water, I mean Diet Pepsi. Obviously. So people aren't going to be happy about this. This guy's a
No.
scumbag. He stole money from clients. Disgusting. Disgusting. And what was he doing with it? Fueling his drug habit? It don't matter what he was doing with it. He stole money from people he was supposed to be helping and protecting.
Mhm,
I mean, shoot. I sit there and give people free advice sometimes, and I'm like, no, don't hire me because I'm like, it's not your best interest to file bankruptcy, a service that
mhm,
I offer. And this dude's sitting here stealing money from people.
mhm,
It makes me so irate. So
mhm.
irate. It's so disgusting and despicable. But if we don't give everybody a fair trial, he is presumed innocent. Again, he now re-gets that presumption of innocence for the murder of Paul and Maggie.
Mhm.
That was reversed. He now enjoys the presumption of innocence. If we don't give that to the worst of people, then the best of people won't have it either.
Right.
And stuff happens. Innocent people get put away sometimes. And our system tries to prevent that. But we can even see, like going back to a couple of decades ago before DNA, the yogurt
Mhm,
shop murders. 3 people
mhm,
went to jail. They did end up appealing out. And then later on, they solved that case with DNA evidence from a guy who wasn't even on the radar. He was like some dude from South Carolina.
mhm,
Serial killers.
mhm.
Maybe it was him. Just kidding. Definitely not him. I'm not saying Alec is innocent. What I'm saying is he gets that presumption again, and the state needs to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, not in a way where we are talking about what a crappy guy he is and tainting the jury. We need to use the facts. This case needs to stand alone on the facts, on the merits. And they need to prove that he murdered his wife and son. I expected this. I've expected this day since 2023 when we had the verdict come down. I
Mhm.
expected this day during the trial before we even had a verdict.
We knew when
Although,
we were watching, but we
if he
didn't know
was
about
not
Hill.
guilty, we wouldn't have had the appeal, but
Right. But we didn't know about Hill during the trial.
we didn't. But the
Mhm.
financial crimes
Absolutely.
I've always rolled my eyes so far in the back of my head, like, this makes no sense. And Murdaugh is an attorney that does personal injury. He knows about deep pockets. He knows who to sue. He knows how clients can collect because they have to assess that before they take a case. If you're suing
Mhm.
an individual and that individual doesn't have anything you can take, then yeah, you might have a lawsuit, but is it
Mhm.
worth spending all this money to collect nothing? So I can't imagine that he wouldn't be familiar with that. Now, who knows? If he's on drugs, who knows what the heck he's
Mhm.
thinking? But it just never made sense to me
Mhm.
why you would put assets in your name while you're being sued instead of leaving it in his boss's name where your creditors can't reach it. Anyway,
Mhm.
we could go into that on a whole nother episode, but great job, Supreme Court. I am surprised that it was unanimous. Uh, that's, I mean, you usually have one person that's like, yeah,
Mhm.
I'm going to concur. I'm going
Mhm.
to find that this is right, but a different way. I don't agree with the
Mhm.
reasoning or maybe some dissents. No, everybody's like, I agree with it. Here's the logic right there.
Mhm.
They
Boom.
even talked about the plain meaning of the statute when they were talking about the standard under Rummer in 606. Anyway, D.
Mhm. It's time for your meeting.
I've got 4 minutes until my meeting. Yeah, we cannot wait. Well, we'll probably have to wait some, but we're going to get into the Murdaugh trial with you. If it comes up, we'll keep you updated on what's happening here in South Carolina. If we
Mhm.
go back to Colleton County channel servers, I'm going to try to go in and sit on one of the court dates. We'll see. We'll see if I can get in,
That'll be
but
cool.
might have some live action here at Remote Reality.
Mhm.
Leave your questions in the comments. Make sure you like and subscribe. Join us for our 90 Day Fiancé coverage. We're going to be doing 90 Day Last Resort. We're doing 90 Day Fiancé, the OG season 12 right now on Mondays. And we are finishing up Southern Hospitality, which takes place
Mhm.
right here in Charleston. And we will announce more to come. But I got to get to my meetings. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Let's ride.